and welcome to the Think MHK podcast presented by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. On this podcast, you will hear from a variety of people from across the region, including community leaders and business owners. You will hear their Manhattan stories and hopefully get to know your friends and business associates a little better. Thanks for tuning in today. Our guest today on the Think MHK podcast is Gavin Schmidt, who is Market President for ESB Financial and our newest member of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee. Hey, Gavin.
Hey, Jason. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. So we always ask our guests first question is to tell us a little bit about themselves and how they ended up in Manhattan.
I would say that my story is similar to a lot of people's story in Manhattan, Kansas, and that's that I grew up in a small town in central or western Kansas, depending on how you would locate yourself. But located from Inman, Kansas is where I was born and raised. Graduated and came up to K-State. Graduated from K-State in the aughts and have never left. So fell in love with the community and wanted to stay here.
And so for those of us that are geographically challenged, Inman, Kansas is where?
Inman, Kansas is located right in between Hutchinson and McPherson County.
All right. And so you were born there, so Inman clearly has its own hospital. And
I should say, for clarification purposes, I was born in Hutchinson, Kansas.
I gotcha.
Yeah. Inman is a town of about 1,000 people, so didn't have a hospital.
That was the town I grew up in, was about 1,000 people as well. So how many did you have in your graduating class?
45.
Oh, so you were big. We had 21. So we were a lot smaller. But so you moved here to go to college, and you never left. And did you go to ESB Financial right away, or did you?
So I came up to K-State. I graduated with a finance degree. Graduated from K-State in 2009. So for those of you familiar with the financial crisis of 2008-9, my timing was impeccable. But went into banking right away. Worked at another community bank here in town for about 8 or 9 years, and then came over to ESB about 10 years ago, and have been in community banking my whole life, my whole career.
So talk about ESB Financial for a minute, including their history, not just here, but in Kansas, and then how ESB has ended up in Manhattan.
So ESB is a fourth generation family-owned bank. So we were established down in Emporia, Kansas in 1901, basically stayed just in that market until 2006. In 2006, ESB decided to, at the time, was named Emporia State Bank, and decided that they wanted to expand. They felt that they had a message and they had a business model that could travel and could continue to grow and create opportunities for the family who owns us. And they decided Manhattan was a perfect opportunity. So in 2006, we decided to open a branch here in Manhattan, Kansas, and have been here ever since. And we're thrilled we're here.
Good. And so locations primarily Emporia and Manhattan, and any other places in Kansas?
Just those two communities. So we have a couple of locations there in Emporia and then one in Manhattan.
So clearly they felt like their values match Manhattan's and have moved here and not really looked at any other places. So that says a lot for their commitment to the community. So you're the market president. So describe what your role is with the company and how long you've been in that role.
Yeah, so I accepted this role in 2020, actually. So again, back to that perfect timing.
I was going to say, you've had interesting timing in your career for sure.
That's right. We try to solve for difficulty for sure, but started this role in 2020. And essentially my role is just to oversee the entire Manhattan market. So basically anything within 75 to 100 miles on both the loan side, the deposit side. I'm kind of what you would say the head of the bank, the face of the bank that is in charge of managing the deposit and the loan operations.
Obviously, how banks are organized and what we see in terms of infrastructure and facilities has changed significantly. You all have a facility on the east side of the community. Do you see that obviously less people are coming into the bank, and how do you think that's going to influence how banks make decisions on new buildings in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jason, and it's something we're grappling with ourselves. We actually own a lot on the west side of town as well, over by kind of the scenic and Anderson Roundabout there. Many of the listeners might be familiar with that location, but we bought a lot there several years ago with the intention of expanding as far as building another physical footprint. But as time and as years have gone on, we've really had to second guess that and just decide, is that the best use of time and capital and just all of our resources. As you mentioned, banking has really changed. The proliferation of applications on your phone and consumer-facing banks and fintech banks is changed the industry for sure. The banking sector is declining as far as number of banks in the state of Kansas, about 2% a year, give or take. And so it's an industry that's going through plenty of changes. So as a community bank, that's something that we constantly discuss and grapple with and figure out what's the best way to position ourselves for the citizens that we serve.
I know at one point I was visiting with Darren. I've been here now 5 years, and Darren's been here a lot longer. And I know there was a point, I think in the 2000s, where it felt like there was a new bank popping up somewhere every few months, and it's just interesting how market demand in terms of how people use facilities has kind of changed that dynamic. So thanks for clarifying some of those on some of those issues. So in terms of for ESB, what are some positive elements and what are some challenges that businesses in general, but banks maybe face in Manhattan, and what's good and what's bad?
I think from a positive perspective, it's one of the reasons, as you mentioned, that a lot of banks have popped up here in Manhattan. There's opportunity here. So you'll notice when you drive through town, you might see a bank that's from Western Kansas, or ESB was obviously originated down in Emporia. There's lots of banks from different areas of the state, and they come to Manhattan because there's opportunity. There's commercial real estate. There's a lot of apartment buildings. There's a lot of different reasons that banks want to come here and try to get their piece of the pie. So that's one of the reasons that I guess a lot of banks, and ESB in particular, have decided to come to Manhattan, is to try to hopefully grow their brand and have an opportunity to do that with a lot of economic development. Basically, the flip side of that is there's a lot of other banks here that are trying to do exactly what we're trying to do. So competition's good. We don't view it as a negative. It's a fact that anytime that you have dozens of different institutions really doing the same thing that we're doing, a lot of times you end up, whether you like it or not, competing on price, and some of those things make for a competitive factor. So I would say that's a positive and maybe a challenge of what's going on here. Another one, specifically to ESB as a community bank, is we have a lot of large publicly funded industry here. So somebody like K-State wouldn't necessarily probably have a use of services for a community bank of ESB's size, similar to Fort Riley as well. So any big capital projects that they're going to do is going to get funded through taxpayers or federal programs or things of that nature.
So obviously all decisions probably made in other places, but obviously the interest rates have created an interesting market across the country over the last year or two. But from what I hear from our local banks, we're still seeing a lot of activity in the community. Is that what you're seeing as well?
We are. Yeah, we're really excited with how the local markets held up. And it really, similar time to 2008 and 2009, just to harken back to that, very difficult time throughout the country. The national economy had really fallen on its heels, and we're starting to see some different measures that it's kind of happening again in our country. But Manhattan is, as I mentioned, there's a lot of public money here. There's the Fort, there's K-State, there's some things that insulate us. And it seems like when maybe it's a tougher time nationally, Manhattan seems to really kind of hold strong. So we're excited about what's happening here in Manhattan, the projects that are going on, and we continue to be bullish for this region.
So ESB's been active in the chamber since you've come to town, and in fact, you will be the second ESB person to serve as chair, because part of being on the exec committee is you're committing to be the chair of the board at some point, and yours is in 2027. But Larry Shope was chair in 2020. Why has ESB been active with the chamber, and why is that a decision that the company has made?
To be short, it's just we believe in the chamber's mission and message. So the chamber has actively stated this, and their focus is on growth, specifically related to population, jobs, wages, in private industry. And ESB is also a pro-growth company, and we believe in those same values. And in short, that's really why we are so laser-focused and in agreement and in alignment with the chamber.
And of course, ESB is very active in the Emporia Chamber. Those are our friends down there. And I've gotten good reports from Janine, who's the chamber president in Emporia as well. Why do you think Manhattan is you've talked a little bit about the stability, but why do you think Manhattan is a great place to work, live, and raise a family?
I mean, I feel like we really punch above our weight when it comes to amenities and attractions. I mean, most 50,000 person-ish population towns, they don't have a new fancy modern airport with, 5 flights a day. They don't have K-State athletics. They don't have an art and light museum that's going up. So the variety of festivals and culture and activities is not something that most 50,000 person towns have. So we get these amazing things to do. We get these amazing attractions with relatively little traffic, measurably pretty low crime, and a lot of the other negative trade-offs that maybe larger metropolitans have. So that's probably the biggest reason why I think that Manhattan is just such a great place to raise a family.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think sometimes we get caught up in what we don't have, and we forget sometimes to think about, and we try to point this out when we are making presentations, that all these things that people want generally come with, you have to have over 100,000 people, and you have to have certain benchmarks that we've not hit yet. And so to think about what we do have with the population we have. So that's a great point, and thanks for making it. You've obviously gotten to where you are in your career at a relatively young age. And so the chamber is very engaged and supports young professionals, and as we're trying to attract and retain more young professionals in the community. And one of the things that we have is a mentoring program. And so one of the things that we try to ask some of our older business community people is that for advice they might have for young professionals. So if you were talking to a young professional who was getting into business today, either going to work for somebody or wants to own their own business, what piece of advice would you give to that individual?
I'll keep it somewhat short, and it's be hungry. If you're going to work for someone else, for a company, if you're going to go be an employee, go figure out how to make your boss's life, the company's life, easier and more productive. Not only ask how you can make that difference, but then probably even a more important piece to that is actually go do it. So when I talk to younger folks, a lot of people want to be that vice president role, or, they see that boss in that office. And I feel like there is a desire to do that, but then to actually go out, ask the question, and then follow through with that hard work is a big piece. And if you're wanting to start your own company or business, I feel like the answer is the same. It's be hungry, go get after it. One of the quotes that I wrote down, and it's always resonated with me, is life favors the specific ask, not the vague wish. And my interpretation of that quote is don't hope for good things to happen. Action matters. If you want a sale, go ask for that sale. If you want a raise, ask for what it's going to take to go get that raise, and then go do the work to make it happen.
That's good advice. So you've probably dealt with a lot of young entrepreneurs, and particularly whether it's through financing or some other networking opportunity. What do you think makes what kind of personality makes a good entrepreneur? Is it that kind of aggressive? Is that?
I think it's a bias to action. It's just that sense that we need to go make things happen. Life, if you let life happen to you, you can get inundated real quick with a lot of distractions. The world has a lot of things going on in it. And if you're willing to live in somebody else's script, it's going to be difficult to break out. But if you have a bias to action, if you have a bias to making things happen and being a proactive person, I think that you can really get ahead.
We're pretty fortunate. We have a lot of those kind of people in Manhattan, don't we?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, I look around at some of the projects that we're doing, and they're not all people who are in their latter parts of their career. I mean, there's a lot of big projects that I could point to that they're pretty young, exciting people going after and tackling those things. And that gives me a lot of hope for Manhattan.
Good point. So as we mentioned, you became a member of the exec committee this year, and that comes with it, this opportunity to be a chair. Why did you decide to accept that position? Because I know it wasn't, it's a commitment, right? It's a 5-year commitment, and there's a lot of things that we expect of our leadership. So what made you decide to take that plunge?
Yeah, it may sound scripted or canned answer, but it's to make a difference. I mean, it really is. I want to make Manhattan a better place in 2034 than it is in 2024. I have young children. I have a 3-year-old boy and a 2-year-old boy. And the only way that this community is going to continue to improve, to grow, to prosper is if all of our citizens get involved and to help shape it. I believe that you can't sit and, wish your community is going to do something for you. It's almost like that old JFK quote that, if you want something to happen, you have to go do it yourself. Ask not for your country what it can do for you, but for what you can do for your country. I'm sure you or somebody else can maybe correct that quote, but it's something along those lines.
No, you got it. You got it. That was close. So I know it's still early in this process, but a lot of times we have people move into the chair position and they have things they want to focus on or initiatives they want to focus on. Have you thought about that at all? And what would some of those be?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't mean to dodge it, but I've been asked.
It's okay. You still have 3 years to think about it. So.
Well, I've been asked that a couple of times, and my response is, I'm new to this. I haven't been involved to this level yet. And so I think my goal is to do a lot of listening, to really understand the process and to really get involved. I think whenever you get involved in any of these things, from the outside, it's easy to say, man, they should be doing this or they should be doing that. And once you get into it, you realize that people are doing a pretty good job and they're trying their best. So I think my goal over the next couple of years is to learn, to listen, to be engaged. And then as my time nears, I'll start to hopefully craft some good initiatives.
Yeah, it's always interesting. And I appreciate you saying some of those things, because I think a lot of times people will say, oh, they should be doing this or they should be doing that. And a lot of times we are in meetings saying, hey, we should be doing this and we should be doing that. But and I know it would be nice if we could just wave a wand and make all the changes that we need. But usually for every initiative and everything that should be done, there's somebody on the other side saying it shouldn't be done. And so it's a delicate balance to try to figure out how you prioritize those things, and then how hard do you push, understanding that there's going to be an opposite reaction to you. So it gets super complicated. And so I think you've taken the right approach in terms of trying to understand all sides of that before you jump in with a specific, hey, this is something we need to do. So, all right. So that's the end of our normal interview questions. And we now move into our rapid fire section. And this is where we try to get to know a little more about you. And so we'll ask a series of questions about kind of your personal life and things that you've done, and try to be as short as you want. We don't cut you off, but generally we try to ask people to hold their answers to 1 or 2 sentences. So I think you're ready for this portion.
Let's go. I'm
okay.
on the edge of my seat.
All right. If you could watch one movie or television show for the rest of your life, what would it be?
The Office.
I have a stepson like that, and we watch a lot of Office at our house. What do you want people to remember about you?
That I lived life to the fullest.
If you could go back in time for a day, what day would you go to?
I would go back to the day that the U.S. landed on the moon. There's so much patriotism at that time. And I think in that moment, I wasn't there, but I could imagine there's just so much hope for the future and for our country. I think that would have been a pretty cool time to go back and see.
Yeah, my parents tell the story. I would have been a few months old when that happened. And my parents tell the story that they kept me up so I could claim that I saw it. So I sat there and watched it with my parents.
That's pretty cool.
What job did you want as a kid?
So my first job I was detailing cars. It was a terrible job. I didn't really enjoy it.
That's not the job you wanted as a kid, I'm sure.
But my second favorite job, and it's still the favorite job to this day, I was a caddy at a golf course in Hutchinson, Kansas. And I loved that job. It was so fun to be a caddy.
Was it a nice one?
Yeah, Prairie Dunes. Yep. Yeah. So caddied there and had a great time. Had some fun stories. Got a caddy for some really interesting, fun people.
Was Bill Murray one of them? Isn't he a member there?
Yeah, his brother was a member. But yeah, I caddied for Bill and a couple of times actually, and got to know him a little bit.
Charles Barkley? Is Charles Barkley?
He's not a member, but he's been there. But there's a whole slew of celebrities that have been there, and it was a fun time just to go walk the course and get to do it. So that was a great job that I had.
Who inspires you the most and why?
Not a specific person, but anyone who's true to themselves. And I mean that. The world's so chock full of people who are trying to be somebody else or something else. And I just really admire people and appreciate people who are comfortable in their own skin and who consistently work to just be the best versions that they can be.
Where is the coolest place you've traveled?
My wife and I have been blessed. We waited to have children for some years and got to travel a lot of fun places. But we took a trip over to Japan, and there's a little community up there, Takayama, Japan. We went during cherry blossom season.
Okay.
There's beautiful old buildings, and the cherry blossoms were blowing. It was about as picturesque as you can imagine.
Yeah, I've been to Japan and found the people there to be wonderful. I enjoyed my experience there. Do you prefer working remotely or in the office?
I am all in on the office. Working from home, it has some benefits. My wife works from home and loves it, but I feel I'm a strong pro-office person. I feel negatives far outweigh the convenience of working from home.
I agree with you there. Of course, you can't do chamber from home anyway. So
That's right.
How do you deal with work stress?
Just try to keep everything in perspective. Big issues today wind up being little blips in the radar a week from now, even a day from now. So just keep in perspective.
First and favorite concert, and obviously that can be two different answers.
Favorite concert. First concert was probably at the State Fair. Not memorable. Wouldn't be something to write home about. But
what?
Favorite
I'm
concert.
sure the State Fair concerts were the best.
I'm sure they were great, but maybe not memorable enough. But Red Hot Chili Peppers' favorite concert, Grant Park in Chicago. Lollapalooza.
I got it. Okay. And then last question, what advice would you give the 19-year-old you?
Just to zoom out. I was a pretty driven younger person. And I think just zoom out, take some time to evaluate what you want to do, where you want to do it, and who you want to do it with. Life's a long road, and just take your time, zoom out.
Well, Gavin, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the exec committee. As we mentioned, that is a massive commitment, and I know it was something that you didn't take lightly, and so appreciate you being willing to do that. And then thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Think MHK, a podcast produced by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. If you enjoyed the Think MHK podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and share it out on your social media channels. Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce.